know when I say that, it's time. How this all came to fruition is Chad really contacted me as Ernest, how can you support me in creating some curriculum around diversity and inclusion? And I said, Chad, wow, I want to do something bigger than that. And we said, kind of talked about some ideas, and so here we are.
Being a white European American woman, I grew up in Oklahoma City in an all white neighborhood, affluent neighborhood. So I had a very small version of a story. And I had this sense that there is something, this just cannot be the whole story. As a family therapist, I know the importance of being able to own our past, to be able to see these stories and these patterns that keep occurring over and over again. The only way that you can create a second story is to really acknowledge that this first story is there in the first place.
It's my belief that when people feel safe, they're empowered to take chances, right? That's what we want to do here today. We want to make this a safe enough environment to know that whatever you say here, we want to hear your story, right? I'm interested in hearing what you believe, but I'm more interested in hearing why you believe it. What experience brought you to that belief? What is your story around your beliefs? And that's how we're going to change culture, is really listening to each other and identifying with each other on terms of experience. And it doesn't have to be right or wrong, right? We're both right. We both have our experience. So I have my story and you have yours. And then what are we going to do to create our second story?
I'm open-minded. It's a very sensitive time to discuss racism. And so I'm just curious to see how you get a diverse group such as what we have here this morning, and how we can all, channel our emotions into, a few small goals or feelings.
I grew up in Giddings, Texas, small town down the road, and I've lived here in Houston since 2011. I practice medicine at Methodist. I think today I'm feeling a little hopeful, I guess. Haven't been a lot of hope lately, so looking forward to it.
Let's see, I'd just say I feel very honored to be here. I feel in my heart center this morning. I feel like the space feels safe, and I feel like the kind of call for a vulnerable conversation and a real conversation.
I just believe that we're all got a unique part of us that's a reflection of God's grace, and what we bring to this world at this time is, I think, it's going to be something that people look back at history, they're going like, man, what did you do? How did you impact the world at that time?
I think it's very necessary in the climate of the world today, and I look forward to this group of people implementing some much needed change in our culture.
I had an opportunity to be a part of circles and conversations like this, some planned and facilitated, and some not so planned and facilitated. So I always get something out of them. So I'm feeling joy and gratitude and hope, and then I've also got that already. No matter how many times I get to be a part of these conversations, there's things that have already been said that are already getting that discomfort. So I think that would be fear, anger, sadness, just all sitting there.
I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I've been here since 2003. And I'm a scientist by vocation. And I've been a member of a lot of different diversity talks. But this is the first one where I felt it's actually authentic.
I want to share that when I was working in Port Arthur, Texas as a young pharmacist, I had a supervisor from the dominant culture. When I inquired about a position that I wanted, I was told that I should just be glad that I have the job as a pharmacist. And growing up in New Orleans, Oklahoma City, I didn't feel like I should be glad to have my job. I felt like I was qualified to have my job, and I did share that with him. So I really hope that this will embolden people to be able to stand up to that type of power when they try to suppress you or make you feel like you're less than.
I guess my story is kind of unique in that I was raised the first 5 or 6 years in a segregated setting, and I learned what it was to be given the hand-me-down books from the dominant culture after they received their new books. And in the 8th grade, we, as they call it, desegregated, which meant that all the black school teachers and administrators were relieved of their jobs and had to move elsewhere. And all the students went to PWI schools.
A couple people have mentioned the term dominant culture. And I want to shift that a little bit and throw out a term, white supremacy. And I'm curious, I want to I say that, and we've asked you to pay attention to your body. So I'm curious to know what happens in your body when you hear that term, and what does it mean to you when you hear it?
That kind of sparks something inside of me. When you hear that, it's like I want to get on the offensive, or defensive, depending on what it is, because you just don't know whether it's going to be a dialogue you have with someone that's considered, or a group that's considered to be white supremacist. It's sometimes it's an uneasy feeling, on how I'm going to respond.
White supremacy is something that I put in a bucket which has no place. You can have other words that talk about race that will give you can say racist, you can say biased, prejudiced, you can say racist, and then when you hit white supremacy, you're at a spot that is very intense.
You say white supremacy, I start seeing hoods and shaved heads and swastikas and all this.
I read this book called White Fragility, and she talked more about, if you can imagine a food chain where whites were at the top of the food chain. And so they were given all of the privileges because they were white. And then things like racism and the other things, those were characteristics, but white supremacy was based on the book that I read, was just whites being at the top of the food chain.
I definitely learned that white supremacy was done. It's in the past, it's only these tiny little groups now. It's violent, I like the way you put that, right? That's what I learned. From the same book, I've been able to sort of, start writing that second story, perhaps.
I look at these statistics and I think, well, I'm a white person. What is wrong with us? And I just carry this shame about me that I can sit across from a patient who's black and listen to her story about how this principal told her her kids shouldn't be in the school because it's all affluent white people. I mean, this happened a month ago, and I think, where are we? What are we doing? And I feel like that burden is on me because they look at me and I'm white. I feel like I carry that. That's heavy, and I kind of feel helpless, For me, it's a disgusting feeling, but it's just this burden. I feel like that's on me. It's a shame that I'm white, and I guess I go along with it. So I'm complicit. You almost feel like you're complicit in this scheme to kind of suppress and repress, and I don't want to be a part of it. I want to wash my hands of it. Very difficult to do, right? That's where I am.
Most African Americans, this is nothing new, what we're seeing.
Right.
It's a big deal because now you can see it on television, but it's been happening. We all got stories that, from years ago.
Thank you. And I just want to go back to what you said, because I think that was a moment that was missed as far as the shame and the people from the dominant culture. I felt something in the room. I don't want to miss that.
I'm ashamed that I grew up my life in this bubble, right? This affluent white community, here in Houston, and never, not that I never had the opportunity, but never took advantage of the opportunity. I think to get to know people of different races, different cultures, and I think I carry a lot of guilt about that. And now that I'm here, I'm like, let's do this. But
I want to share just a feeling I had when you said you felt shame. My heart sank for you. My heart had sympathy for you. I went to Catholic high school, maybe 98% white. Went to the University of Texas, well over 5% white. When I look at these stats, I said to myself, you feel and bear the guilt of these? We are a country, and I'm thinking that some of my friends who've had amazing conversations on social media, I'm thinking, hell, they thought since we had a black president, it's all over. You can't have any more racism. There's no more that exists, really. That's like saying you can plant something and never expect to have any weeds that can try to affect that garden. And this is going to be something that till the day we die, we're going to have to continue to do our part to make this a better place. We have to continue to engage in real, thoughtful, intentional conversations that deal with the fear, the hate, greed that undergirds that thing that we see and know as white supremacy.
The shame piece, it really feels like a big part of this. I think shame for me has been probably the predominant inhibitory feeling that comes up that made me not want to engage this conversation at all.
The idea around the second story started over lunch with me and Ernest when we really talked about what would happen. We were talking about kind of the state of the country. It was at the height of the divisions that were formed and the fault line that was drawn. What would happen if instead of shouting, I just took time to listen, right? And heard someone else's story. Our vision is to create community and connection by fostering places where these kinds of conversations can take place.
So I feel I've been given permission to maybe leave the shame, to not carry the burden of people that preceded me, right? That may have put some of these things in place. We'll work hard to listen, be compassionate, and offer space for others, but leaving it here.
The shame that I felt right when I first started getting into this, and I just ran to Ernest, what can I do? What can I do, Ernest? And it was take this conversation to my neighborhood. And so what I'm struggling with these days is I've become what I'm so upset with.
I would like to leave behind the pain that I suffered from stepping into the fire, as my husband said.
Something that I'd like to leave behind today is the fear of taking up space due to the internalized belief that my voice doesn't matter.
I'm going to leave the desire to try to control people's response to me, to my questions about their prejudice or questions about their viewpoint. And this meeting helped me to kind of get even more clarity about it, but that we are bridge builders. My purpose of being a bridge builder, that peacemaker, to do my part in this generation, to be a bridge builder is something that I'm, just kind of stay, purposeful in every interaction that I have, and hope that, hey, they're willing, to be a part of the positive change. That's my thought.
What I am leaving behind is the belief that my actions can't contribute to change. And the image that's coming up for me, because I want to change the world right now. And the image that's coming up for me is just the pebble in the pond. instead of the ripples. So just my little piece, just keep doing my little part, what I can see what the next right thing is. So I'm leaving behind that I can't affect change.
What I want to leave behind, I know for me, is that you said it, that people that don't think like I do, that don't love like I do, that don't, have the same spiritual beliefs that I do, that there's also space for them in my life. And it's okay if they disagree, and that I can still love them. And so that's what I want to walk away with more than anything, that there's a place in my heart for difference.